Rock and roll. Great to see everybody. It's fantastic to actually be on a stage after a little over a year of being locked down. So that's always a breath of fresh air. My name is Dominik Andrzejczuk. As you can tell by the last name, very Polish. And if you couldn't already tell by the accent, also very American. So I was born here in Poland, raised in the US, came back in 2018. I'm a physicist by training, engineer by trade. 2014, I became a VC. Spent most of my career in Palo Alto, California, heart of Silicon Valley. Moved here in 2018 because saw a lot of opportunity in the region. So 2019, we closed our first fund. So that's a deep tech fund, 2019 vintage. Atmos, we're investing primarily in deep tech small enterprises. So we're sort of a generalist deep tech fund. We're looking at quantum computing, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, health, biotech, across the board. So what does deep tech mean? Well, it means technology that's very hard to replicate, technology that has a lot of intellectual property potential, and really sort of what is our main value proposition to our portfolio companies is, well, we provide access to investors in the Valley. So we're investing in the best European founders here in the region. And these founders are also solving problems that are not just unique to Central Europe, but unique to the entire world. And this is actually one of my favorite slides. This really sort of paints a picture of why Central and Eastern Europe are quite unique, especially Poland, for growth. Here we have venture capital investments in 2016. So it's slightly dated, but the proportionalities are still very much the same. Poland maybe has increased by two to threefold since 2016 because of all of the public financing that is available from either publicly funded venture capital funds or public grant programs. But on the other hand, UK, France, Germany, Sweden, they've also seen a massive influx in venture capital investments in AI. But really what makes things very relevant for this region is the total number of university grads in STEM from Poland. And this is actually something that's not just unique to Poland, but it's unique to the entire region. And something that's actually interesting about the difference between Silicon Valley and this region is, you know, there's always this joke in Silicon Valley, there's too many MBAs, not enough engineers. And MBAs, you know, are good at solving certain problems, but they're not good at solving actually the real problems. Whereas here in Central Europe, you have the opposite problem. You have too many engineers, not enough MBAs. So trying to figure out how to bridge that gap by offering either founders from the US, from North America, or investors, sophisticated investors from North America can really take advantage of this dichotomy. So something that's also interesting about CEE in the Nordics is that there's a relatively higher concentration of investments in deep tech. And the reason why I think this is if you look at the university systems in Europe, you have a lot of really sophisticated technology coming out of almost every single university. Whereas in the US, for example, you have Stanford, you have MIT, you've got the Ivy Leagues, and then there's sort of a drop-off point. Like the state schools compared to the Ivy League are a little lopsided. Whereas here in Poland, University of Warsaw, Warsaw University of Technology, Silesia University, Jagielloński University, they all have phenomenal tech coming out of those universities and a lot of really talented individuals that you can recruit from and hire from. And so just one example of a deal that we did this year, it was in a company called MoleculeOne. So MoleculeOne does synthesis planning for pharmaceutical companies. So this is a biotech company, but it's not a traditional biotech company where they're discovering drugs sort of the old-fashioned way. But rather they look at mountains of data for synthesis. They're looking at mountains of synthesis data, and they're using AI to crunch all of the text from quite literally textbooks, and they're allowing chemists to figure out synthesis pathways to create certain types of molecules. The way this is done today is a chemist will go into a laboratory, open up a textbook, and try to figure out how to synthesize some molecule manually. So what this does is this saves months, if not years of time, which translates into tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for the pharmaceutical industry. So this is a Polish company. They're based here in Warsaw. We just closed close to a $5 million round. And in the syndicate that we put together, we have Ame Cloud Ventures, which is the venture capital firm of the founder of Yahoo, Jerry Yang. We have C-Lane Ventures, which is also based on the West Coast. They're also a biotech firm, and Luminous Ventures. So half of the syndicate came from US investors, and this sophisticated capital is going to help the company not just from capital point of view, but they're going to help with recruiting, they're going to help with hiring the right sales team in the US, because let's face it, the US is the largest market for pharmaceuticals. Yes, MoleculeOne is a Polish company. Yeah. Very talented founders, engineers, medical doctors. Yeah. So next we have Nithone. This is a cybersecurity company. We actually just closed this deal today, so we can actually announce our investors. So in Nithone, we have Plug and Play. This is an accelerator in the Valley. They're actually famous for incubating companies like PayPal. So Nithone does biometric data analysis of detecting whether or not you have a human or a bot that's using a mobile device or is using a desktop browser. And it determines whether or not the person or the robot behind the browser is indeed a human. And if it thinks that it's not a human, then it'll prevent the transaction from happening. So we were able to get Plug and Play on board and push them over the line. And obviously, so Plug and Play has been around for a very long time. They have companies in their portfolio that are publicly traded, and that gives access to Nithone for potential customers in the future, giving access to their network. Now, I kind of want to talk about sort of the flip side of expansion from the US into Central Europe. Going back to that slide where Central Europe has lots and lots of technical talent, there are a lot of companies in the US that can't find enough engineers, enough mathematicians to hire for specific types of companies. So this company is a company based in Seattle, Washington. It's called CT Fusion. They're building a mini tokamak. So a tokamak is, if you're familiar with ITER in France, it's a fusion reactor, a nuclear fusion reactor, uses deuterium, tritium fuel. And CT Fusion is building a much smaller, scaled-down version of the ITER in France. And CT Fusion want to build a research and development center right here in Warsaw and hire maths, fluid dynamic engineers to work on simulations of the mini tokamak that they plan on releasing in the later half of this decade. So something that we're very excited about. And also recently I wanted to make note, we've teamed up with a private equity firm based out of New York. They are more of a traditional kind of software, fintech, private equity firm, and they are coming here to Poland to deploy capital, investing in BPOs, fintech, traditional software companies, and offering those companies, access to their portfolio, access to their customers, et cetera. So with that, I want to thank you very much for your attention, and happy to answer questions later after the Citibank presentation.